All right, so now we're going to look at finding x-intercepts from our equations. We already did it with our y-intercepts. We can do the same thing with our x-intercepts. So we got this equation. It's in vertex form. It's the same one. Y equals 1/2, x minus 3 squared minus 4. Now remember, what a 0 is, it's an x-intercept. So that's what we're trying to really solve for. We're trying to find our x-intercepts. All right, and when you have a 0, it is when your output, or your y, is actually going to be equal to 0. All right, that's what it means to be 0. That's why they're called zeros. When you plug in your input, you get your output. Your output is 0. So replace your output, your y, with 0. That's the equation that we're going to solve for. So 0 is equal to all that stuff. Now, the way that we can look at it is, how would you actually evaluate it? Look at the x variable. There's a lot of operations. You would subtract 3. You would square it. You'd multiply it by 1/2. And then you'd subtract 4. When you do all of those operations to that x value, whatever it is, your result should be 0. So that's how we're going to start this out. Let's think about how we would evaluate that number to get to 0, to get a result of 0. So you would subtract the 3. You'd square it. You times by 1/2. You subtract 4, and you know that you would end with a 0. All right, so now what we need to do is we need to climb our way backwards. We got to go back up to the top. Start with what you know. You know that your end result should be 0. Well, you got to undo all this stuff. So if I subtracted 4 to get to 0, to climb back up to the top, I have to add 4. And then I'm going to have to divide by 1/2. Instead of squaring it, I'm going to have to square root it. And remember, when you square root, you should have a positive value and a negative value. And then the last thing is that you're going to have to add 3. So I'm going to have this positive and negative value. So what I did was I said, hey, when I get the positive number, I'll add 3 to it. When I get the negative value, I'll add 3 to that as well. All right? So let's start down at the bottom. Let's figure out what this number is supposed to be. I'm going to take 0 and add 4. That result gets me 4. Now I'll take 4 and divide it by 1/2. That result is actually 8. I'll show you why. 4 divided by 1/2. Take 4 things, 4 circles, and you want to chop each of those 4 circles in half. When you chop each of those 4 circles in half, you actually have 8 pieces now. So 4 divided by 1/2 is equal to 8. Now you're going to take 8, take that value, that result, and take a square root of that. You end up getting 2.82, and of course your negative 2.82. So those two values now need to be added to 3. So you end up getting 5.82 and then 0.18. So your zeros for this equation becomes 5.82 and 0.18. You can also write them as x-intercepts, and when you write them as x-intercepts, they are going to be points. So 5.82, 0, and then your 0.18, 0.